warm welcome to this very special show on ET Now. I'm Ruchi Bhatia.
And I'm Nayantara Rai. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be gazing through the ET Now crystal ball to predict the top stories that are going to define 2019.
Nayantara, the year 2018 was the one that shook the invincibility of the Modi-Shah duo. The year began with an overconfident BJP thundering 18 of the 29 states. But soon the fortunes changed. At one point of time, Modi's electoral success gave it an upper hand on his allies. But now the question is, if Modi's magic was waning away.
Well, for the Congress, it was a phoenix-like revival for Rahul Gandhi. Whether it's Rafale, the Gabbar Singh tax, Rahul Gandhi attacked Narendra Modi right from the front. The aim of the Congress party is to have a Modi-free India. And for that, the opposition has galvanized itself to form the Mahagathbandhan. The big question is it going to be Modi versus the rest in the new year, in the general election? And is it even sustainable?
Will it be Modi versus the rest in 2019? Well, not really. The regional parties would be very much in the fray. In fact, I would say many of them would make a very strong showing, and I would give at least a 20% chance that the next government may be a third front government of regional parties, a minority government supported from outside, but it's possible that it will be there without either Modi or Congress. Will Modi be able to beat the Mahagathbandhan, especially in UP and some of those states? A tough job, but not impossible. I think on the one hand, if it was just Yogi Adityanath versus Mayawati and Akhilesh, then Yogi would have a tough job. But this will really be seen as more as a Rahul versus Modi, in which case I think the BJP would do much better. So uncertain, a tough job, but yes, it is conceivable that Modi will beat the Mahagathbandhan in the Hindi heartland. And finally, can Rahul beat Modi overall? Unlikely. Certainly on his own he can't do it. But post-election, will he be able to put together a coalition with a large number of regional parties? It is possible. I would say that up to a 30% chance that Rahul ultimately post-election may be able to put together a winning coalition. I would say Modi's chances are a little higher, 40 to 50%.
As we head into 2019, what will be the mainstay of the general elections? Will politics take the better of economics is the big question. With all schemes rolled out in the first 4 years, 2018 saw Modi's focus on the implementation and the last mile connectivity to reach beneficiaries. However, the development plank was hijacked by the Rafale row and Ayodhya politics. Will Mandir politics take centre stage ahead of 2019? Listen into that expert view by Neerja Chaudhary.
You know, it's the economic issues which have dominated the poll 2018 in 5 state elections. Farmers' distress and unemployment among youth that the Congress zeroed in on. And then the unhappiness of those in the informal sector who lost their jobs as a result of demonetization, and traders and small and medium scale entrepreneurs being unhappy with the GST. So overall, it's been the economic issues, not emotional issues, that have dominated. Now the political issues that are coming to the fore and are being flagged off by parties are in some way a response to the economic issues. For instance, Mandir. Mandir is probably an attempt to placate the BJP's core constituency, also those amongst the upper castes who have become angry that the job reservations are continuing for the SC/STs, and the government brought in an amendment in the SC/ST Atrocities Act. And this situation, and they feel, you know, angry about their own party, which they have supported, taking this particular position, or the demand by the Marathas and the Jats and the Patidars, who are farming communities, for reservation in jobs for their communities, which are otherwise quite powerful politically, is all coming from not being able to address the issue of joblessness. And joblessness is going to be the burning issue in the months and years to come as far as elections go. So I think Mandir is an attempt to deflect from it, to get upper caste and other Hindus to identify that they are Hindus at the end of the day and can consolidate in favor of the BJP again. But the essence of it all is economics and not politics in that sense. Rafale has not had the kind of traction at the ground level that the Congress party had hoped for, and the Supreme Court's verdict dismissing the petitions has also not helped. Otherwise, it might have picked up.
This election season, Big Brother's watching. Big Brother, the Modi government. Your phones, computers can all be intercepted and decrypted. While on one hand, in 2018, we saw the Supreme Court's landmark verdict that ruled privacy indeed is a fundamental right, we have the centre trying for more ways to snoop into our lives and get data ahead of that general election. To be fair, the government says they're only enforcing and executing what the Congress party had come up with. But is that a good enough answer?
In a democracy, we must remember that trying to influence your opinion is absolutely fine. Indeed, it is an expected part of elections, and using big data to influence is not in the least a problem. On the other hand, using any kind of data to manipulate is a problem. Now, what is the distinction between influencing and manipulating your views? The distinction I would propose is this, that if you're being transparent about, for instance, how you got certain kinds of information and why you're making an argument to a voter, for how you've targeted this particular voter for a particular ad, if you're transparent about all of that, that I would say is influencing. On the other hand, if you're not transparent about what you're doing, for instance, to take an example that people may be familiar with, if you get a reporter to write an article about you for payment and you haven't disclosed that that reporter has been paid, that is called paid news. Now, a reporter writing an article about you isn't a problem, but doing so for payment, which is a non-transparent means, is actually a problem. And so that would not be, that is not allowed under current election law. And I would argue equally, manipulation based on big data should not be allowed. And indeed, all kinds of big data that is collected, one ought to be careful that it's only collected with people's consent. If there's any personal data involved in that, and any kind of collection of data without people's consent would indeed be a problem. And as long as there's only influencing, I think the elections would be free and fair, but that's not where the trend, unfortunately, I think is headed.
Bulling China into better trade policies had been a part of Donald Trump's election campaign, and he started walking that very dangerous talk in 2018. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping's trade war rocked financial markets worldwide and also threatened global growth.
It all started by Donald Trump imposing tariffs on washing machines, and that soon escalated to his administration imposing tariffs worth a staggering $250 billion on Chinese goods. China retaliated with tariffs on American goods worth $110 billion, with a special focus on politically sensitive items like agriculture. Now, leaders of both nations have agreed to a ceasefire at the G20 in Argentina. But will we see a real peace deal in 2019?
Well, I think the uncertainties created by populist actions, the whole uncertainty about trade is in fact a direct consequence of that. I think that overlaid on a process of normalizing interest rates creates a situation we haven't really experienced before. Where are you going to invest today? How do you know that where you invest is not going to be subject to 20% more tariffs, which will render the operation uneconomic? You don't even want to invest in your home country in case a competitor becomes significantly cheaper when the tariffs are withdrawn. So there's a lot of uncertainty created by this populist movement. I think they're asking the right questions. Has the global growth over the last 25 years benefited all? And there are people who haven't been benefited who are saying, what about us? That's an important question that the elite have to answer. But I think at the same time, they're proposing a whole set of policies that could be disruptive. We have to find ways to adopt the best of those policies without overturning the whole system that we have built, which has served us reasonably well, though not as equitably as we would want.
Trade wars, tightening global interest rate regime and wild swings in crude oil prices gave the Modi government some sleepless nights. Crude went past the $85 per barrel mark, hurting both consumers and increasing worries on the twin deficit front. Top weak macros with liquidity crunch arising as a fallout of the IMF's crisis. The banking sector mess as well. Investors taking flight, leading to a sharp rise in government bond yields and a fall in the rupee as well. As we head into 2019, will India's macros be on the mend? ET Now's consulting editor Maithili Busarmath with that answer.
What is the state of the macroeconomy as 2019 dawns? Well, if you look at the broad picture, the economy is certainly in better health as we start the new year 2019 as it was compared to a year ago. GDP growth is definitely better, significantly better, I would say. Yes, the current account deficit is wider, but it's not distressingly so. There were worries that the current account deficit would widen intolerably, but that was when oil prices were shooting through the roof. Now that oil prices have come down, I think the current account deficit, even though it is worse than it was last year, is nowhere near alarmingly high. The fiscal deficit is more or less in line with what the government had predicted, unless, of course, we see a slippage in the coming months. So if you look at growth, current account deficit, fiscal deficit, the picture is worse only on the current account deficit. Inflation, which is a big source of worry on the macroeconomic front as far as India is concerned, is markedly lower. So on most of the fronts, we are in a better position. What changes the picture perhaps is the huge uncertainty when we go into 2019. January 2018, the government still had a year and a half to go. 2019, one really does not know the political situation, what it's going to be, what the elections are likely to throw up. So one can look at the 2019 broadly in two halves. The first half until elections and the second half post-elections. So broadly, most governments have continued with reform, but the pace of the reform could change quite dramatically depending on what kind of results we get at the end of the elections. So broadly speaking, macroeconomy in reasonably good health, no major signs of worry, but within the broad picture there are some pain points, essentially the banking sector, agriculture and export performance. Yes, the rupee has weakened, but not distressingly so, and that should help exports. So broadly going ahead, good picture, but with signs of worry internationally as well and also domestically, and the huge overhang of politics over it all.
The Lal Street surely had a bumpy ride in 2018, and a lot of that can be blamed on global cues. The dollar's appreciation, crude on the boil, and of course the US-China trade war. Domestically, the liquidity crisis unleashed by the IMF saga also created havoc, but thankfully that was short-lived. But it's far from gloom and doom. Data does indicate 2018 was a bull's market. Look at the FIIs, they sold $4.5 billion worth of paper, but then equity funds purchased worth a mammoth $17 billion. Is 2019 going to belong to the bulls again?
2019, yes, markets surely will remain volatile. Markets are likely to react to a couple of calendar events, which is how exactly Fed would move, what will happen to assembly elections, and what really would be the progress on the macro front. Now, the differentiating part for 2019, of course, would be the elections. Historically, we've seen that markets, they tend to move both back and forth ahead of elections, and there could be a swing factor of anywhere between 5 to 10%. But the election volatility aside, 2019 could be a very interesting year as to how risk really pans out. We've seen solid outperformance by benchmark indices in 2018, largely because of IT, pharma, and some private banks. That may not continue. 2018 was dominated by macro concerns, but 2019 would be dominated by individual events. And typically when individual events are at play, you cannot predict the market action, which means for 2019 you could prepare yourself for more volatility, fasten your seatbelt for more macro action, but you may also see a departure from some of the crowded consumer names, stroke some of the crowded NBFC names to some of the very basic names, which means I expect cyclicals, I expect industrials to make a comeback. Corporate bank could be a large trade for 2019, and you may see migration really away from FMCG to autos, because if interest rates are not likely to move higher, you may actually see some degree of outperformance which may come back in some of the beaten down rate sensitives like autos and to a large extent consumer discretionary stocks.
Jobs, jobs and more jobs. That was Modi's poll plank in 2014. But the question is, where are those jobs? Things could get even worse with artificial intelligence and robots taking over. Nayantara 2018 saw the world's first artificial intelligence newsreader in China. Seems like our jobs are at stake after all.
Nobody can copy me, not even a robot. I think I'm particularly safe. This personality, only one Nayantara Rai. But having said that, I did pose this very question to Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, earlier this year and said, what is going to happen to jobs? And does he agree with Bill Gates? Do we need a tax when companies adopt artificial intelligence at the cost of jobs?
I like Bill Gates' thinking about for practical solutions. He's also stood about we should fear that our jobs are going away, and Elon Musk talks that way, and Stephen Hawking. And I did a couple of years ago, for about 2 years on stage, I would talk about the singularity, what it means, and it means machines replacing the brain means companies without humans will do better economically, and economics wins, but that's negative thinking. And I tried to get around it, and I finally came to the conclusion, like an engineer, what steps physically would have to happen before all these human jobs are replaced, and it was way too much. It's not something that happens instantly. Our jobs have been replaced by machines for 200 years or more since Manchester, England. They figured out how to make clothing cheaply in factories. Well, did people all of a sudden wind up with no jobs? We have all the cars are manufactured now this way. No, jobs shift where the job places are, they shift, and there are social disruptions where some jobs go out of business.
But
what
now
you're
it's
trained
not
for.
like the Industrial Revolution, right?
Well, now it's like machines are a little bit smarter making the decisions for us. We used to learn that we go to school and we learn academic learning, memorizing a lot of facts and methods, and now, no, you just have to know which buttons to push. You have to be skilled at that, and that tends to be your job all day long. The machines help you, but they help you with the boring parts. Machines don't do real thinking. We do not know how the brain thinks. We do not know how to build. When we talk about AI, I agree with the A and I disagree with the I. They are not intelligence because we don't know how the brain is structured or how it works. We don't even know where it stores memories. Are they in the brain? We don't know that. We know that processing is in the brain. Okay, we know how much information is processed in the brain, but not how. For example, no machine that we call artificial intelligence ever sits down and says, what should I do today? What would be a clever method that nobody's thought of to do something new? No, they only do what a human has told them to do. Yeah. They've never taken that, wherewithal to kind of be in charge of it.
These three deals scripted a new chapter in the entertainment and news industry in 2018. Now there are very blurred lines between content creators, distribution companies and telcos. And it will happen in India too, where already the mighty Netflix and Amazon have started creating original content with Bollywood biggies. Don't believe me? Listen in to King Khan.
I think there has been a radical change in cinema and its content over the years. A change even in the way we consume cinema. But right now, as we sit here, I think that we are witnessing perhaps the greatest change of all yet. Yes, and the greatest change I think in this century has been the evolutionary revolution that has taken place in humankind is the opening up of communication, information on the digitized platform. And what's going to happen is that today onwards, in this century, in the few years to come, there is going to be no control over how information is passed. There is no person who's going to hold back, however powerful, however rich, the flow of information anymore. So I have 5 points to make about what I think, how cinema of the future is going to be affected, what changes will come through, and I would like all the businessmen here to listen to me carefully, because this is the main part of my speech, and if you understand this, you'll make loads more money. First of all, with the advent of digitization and a thing called big data, There is going to be a lot of changes in how we consume cinema, how we watch it, how we critique it. But mainly the change is going to be how we market cinema. So last night I was with my friend Rajan Mittal and Ajay Bijli, and Ajay was very disturbed because he owns this big chain of theaters where he was talking about the fact that, listen, no footfalls are coming into cinema theater, but whatever we are going to lose out in the conventional sense, we are going to gain in terms of attracting more eyeballs through big data. So that's going to be the big business of the future as far as cinema is concerned, especially in a country like ours, where we are still have a huge untapped market in digital consumption. The second change that is going to happen is that there is going to be a radical movement away from the content itself. Movies are going to be shorter, I think. They will be without intervals. And instead of stories being based on more social and psychological geographies, because everybody will be available, talking, exchanging ideas on the digital world. And because of this flow of ideas being uncontrolled and going on as it is, anyone can make a movie in the future, what's going to happen is even big production houses are going to suffer. They're going to completely break down. Power will not be vested in the hands of you like me, or I won't name other production companies, I'll just mention myself, but all the other production houses, because there will be a more democratic process via which you will understand the demand for the kind of cinema, because the audience will straight away send you a feedback like it already does on Netflix. Also, I've mentioned this before, instead of all of us waiting for money or taking loans, what is going to happen is there's going to be a lot more crowdfunding. The third change that is going to happen is between the viewer and how we watch the film. That is going to be a big change. Right now, whenever movies attract us, it's a momentary catch of emotion or an experience, but soon, movies themselves will become the experience. They will be interactive. You will sit down, you can change the endings, you'll be able to change the characters. You can watch different films, your children and your family, while watching the same film, you can follow different storylines. All this is going to add, of course, value to entertainment and how you're going to watch it. But these changes are really going to radically change everything that you believe in. And so, for example, by the time I do Dawn 6, yeah, or no, I'll tell you, you know, कि वो यार 11 मुल्कों की पुलिस डॉन को ढूंढ रही है, अबे बुड्ढा हो गया, पुलिस में कहाँ इसको ओल्ड एज होम में डाल दो, and you can change it. One request I'm going to do to my friend Salman Khan, I love him, but जब उसकी अगली 33rd version of Tiger जिंदा है आएगी, और जब वो 2000 करोड़ रुपए कमाएगा, तो मैं उसको पड़ जाऊंगा पाँव और बोलूँगा भाई टाइगर को जिंदा रहने दे, रिटायर हो जा प्लीज. So we can change all that.
This, for cricket lovers, could indeed be the image of the year. It's time once again for the Cricket World Cup. It's scheduled for this summer. It's going to happen in England. And I'm convinced Virat Kohli is going to come home with the trophy, just like MS Dhoni and Kapil Dev. Having said that, folks, mark your calendars. June 16th, it's a Sunday. It's India versus Pakistan in Manchester. Tickets are sold out. And remember, India's never lost to Pakistan at a World Cup. And that ain't going to happen in 2019 either.
And Nayantara is definitely not going to miss it for sure.
You get me a ticket.
In July 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first man to land on the moon. 50 years later, will we see the first commercial flight to land on moon? That's what Elon Musk and SpaceX have promised us. Even Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos.
Right, so are we going to see space tourism take off in 2019? Watch this space. And by that, I really mean this space, not outer space.
All right, well, that is a wrap on this edition. Many thanks for watching and wish you all a very happy new year.